Imagine a group of Soviet soldiers huddled around a campfire in the frigid mountains of Afghanistan, staring into a pot of boiling water. Instead of stew or soup, they're cooking. Bullets? Sounds crazy, right? Well, this bizarre strategy was their attempt to combat a serious logistical crisis in the harsh realities of war. How did they get here, and what were the chilling consequences? Join me as we uncover this strange chapter of military ingenuity and sabotage. Picture this, a group of weary Soviet soldiers, their faces lined with exhaustion and cold, gathered around a flickering campfire in the remote mountains of Afghanistan. They stare intently into a pot of boiling water, and you might assume they're preparing soup, stew, or something edible. But no, what's cooking inside that pot? Bullets. Have they lost their minds? Not quite. This peculiar approach was their answer to a very real problem. In late 1979, as the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, their troops faced chronic issues with logistics and dreadful rations, corrupt supply lines, mismanagement, and the all-too-common taste of military food that resembled punishment drove these soldiers to seek alternatives. Enter Afghan merchants. Soldiers traded whatever meager currency they had for fresh bread, fruits, and perhaps a morsel of meat, anything to escape the bland fare served up by Soviet field kitchens. But here's the twist. Soviet troops weren't exactly rolling in cash. Instead, they had an abundance of ammunition, and in a war zone, no one counts every bullet. With a quick tweak here and there on the paperwork, you could easily requisition a few extra magazines. Nobody would question a soldier in the heat of battle asking for more. So what did the soldiers do? They turned to trading ammo for food. But just like every good story, complications arose. The Mujahideen, the Afghan resistance fighters, weren't a traditional army. They melted into the civilian population. Many of the same merchants providing sutures of supplies to Soviet soldiers were also funneling that very ammunition to their enemies. The Mujahideen adored Soviet ammo. It was a perfect match for the AKMs and captured AK-74s they wielded. Every time a Soviet soldier exchanged a handful of rounds for a handful of raisins, those very rounds might end up whistling past them in the hands of their foes. Clearly, this was problematic. The Soviets, needing to take decisive action without alerting merchants or the Mujahideen, devised a clever-sounding plan around the campfire. They boiled their bullets. They believed that 4 to 5 hours of simmering would destroy the primer enough to render the ammunition useless without heating it to the point of explosion. The intention was simple. When the bullets reached their enemies, they would misfire, maybe jam a rifle, and the Soviets could enjoy a warm meal without unintentionally arming the resistance. Did it work? Well, we'll circle back to that, because while those bullets boiled away, other armies were crafting far more effective and terrifying ways to sabotage their enemies. The United States found itself entrenched in a brutal conflict against the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army, while American troops moved slowly through the dense jungles. Their elusive enemies vanished before they could even react. Enter Colonel John Singlaub and the Studies and Observation Group SOG. Specializing in secret missions behind enemy lines, these small teams kept stumbling upon enemy ammunition depots. The problem? Blowing them up scattered explosives everywhere, while trying to transport the heavy ammo was impractical. So what did Singlaub propose? Something cunningly sneaky? Project Eldest Son? His plan involved taking captured 7.62 X-39 rounds, carefully opening them, dumping out the powder, and replacing it with a significantly more powerful explosive one capable of generating over 250,000 psi, nearly 6 times the pressure an AK can handle. The idea was to turn a simple rifle round into a miniature pipe bomb capable of exacting severe injury to the user. But there was a catch. Every single round had to be perfect, no marks, no scratches, no signs of tampering. This meant painstaking hours spent meticulously converting ordinary cartridges into disguised explosive devices. By the end of this grueling task, operatives had altered approximately 12,000 AK rounds, 5,556 heavy machine gun rounds, and nearly 2,000 mortar shells. Next came the stealthy infiltration. SOG teams would carry bundles on their missions, discreetly slipping sabotaged rounds into enemy caches. Moreover, a disinformation campaign was launched, leaflets warning about poorly constructed Chinese weapons, radio broadcasts claiming their guns might blow up, and fake studies suggesting low-quality equipment. The objective here wasn't merely to take out a few enemy soldiers, but to instill paranoia, making the Viet Cong fear their own weapons. And it worked for a while. Reports emerged of Viet Cong fighters found dead with rifles blown apart in their hands. However, Project Eldest Son had a major flaw. It stayed secret until it didn't. A leak to the press completely derailed the operation. Once the enemy became aware, the effectiveness of the sabotaged ammunition was utterly compromised. But let's rewind even further to the American Civil War, where we encounter another devious plot, one that seems almost too simple to be true, the Cole torpedo. With the Confederacy under siege, Union ships were restricting essential supplies through a tactic known as the Anaconda Plan. Facing a lack of resources, the South turned to a spy named Thomas Edgeworth Courtney, whose idea was strikingly clever. Courtney proposed taking a hollow artillery shell, reshaping it to resemble an ordinary lump of coal, filling it with gunpowder, and sealing it with wax and tar. The end result was a bomb that resembled fuel. Slip one into a Union ship's coal pile, and sooner or later, someone would shovel it into the boiler. The result? A catastrophic explosion, black smoke, and the destruction of Union ironclads. In 1864, the Confederacy manufactured a batch of these coal torpedoes. But fate had other plans. A Confederate agent carrying the plans was captured, leading to tightened Union security. While some torpedoes might have made it through, we can only speculate since steam engines were prone to explosions in the 1860s. Two incidents stand out, however. The USS Shenango exploded during her maiden voyage in 1864, claiming 30 lives. And later that year, the Union troop ship Greyhound suffered a catastrophic boiler explosion, forcing the crew to abandon ship. Did these coal torpedoes contribute to those incidents? Perhaps, but we may never know for certain. And therein lies the truth about tactics like these hidden explosives, sabotaged ammunition, and rigged coal lumps. They not only target the enemy physically, but also invade their minds. Once a soldier begins to question whether the next round might misfire, or whether the next shovelful of coal might detonate, doubt creeps in. That uncertainty can lead to hesitation, and in warfare, hesitation can be fatal. And this brings us back to those Soviet soldiers and their boiling bullets. People often resort to strange measures under immense stress. Yet bizarre strategies like these aren't always effective. In the end, their plan utterly failed. Modern ammunition is incredibly robust. The sealed casings prevent water intrusion, and the primers of 20th century rounds are unyielding. Boiling doesn't compromise them. So while Confederates were wreaking havoc with coal bombs and SOG operatives in Vietnam turned rifles into grenades, Soviet troops in Afghanistan found themselves merely heating up a pot full of bullets. These tricks might not have shifted the tides of war, but they stirred up paranoia and left an indelible mark. Because sometimes the most menacing weapon on the battlefield isn't the rifle you're holding, but the doubt spiraling in your mind about whether it's safe to pull the trigger. Thanks again from Shadows of the Crown and for watching our complete video.